Somewhere in Busan, a young girl named Song-yi is seen walking alone in the dead of the night. She is on a call, arguing with someone. When she reaches a sketchy street, she feels that someone is following her and becomes scared. Song-yi immediately tries running away, but just then, a mysterious person comes out of a manhole, grabs her legs, and pulls her inside. Sometime later, she wakes up inside a strange room, which is completely dark, like most of the scenes in this movie. Song-yi tries sneaking out of the place when suddenly, a feral boy grabs her legs. He appears to be mute, and is chained to the wall. It is evident that he was also kidnapped and brought here a long time ago. Unfortunately, the commotion alarms the kidnapper in the other room. He is revealed to be a mentally unstable man named Soo-chul, who was abandoned by his family long ago. He quickly confronts Song-yi and ties her to a chair. The little girl pleads to be released, but Soo-chul instead cuts her hair, saying they will be together from now on. Following this, we are introduced to a 14-year-old girl named Soo-jung, who appears to be mute and deaf. Her parents passed away a few years ago, and now, she is living with her elder sister, Yeon-seo. The latter is about to return from her night shift, so she video calls Soo-jung and asks her to close all the doors and wait for her. Here, we get to know that the city has been plagued with several kidnapping cases as of late, putting the residents on high alert. Unfortunately, Soo-jung is unaware of all this, and she is too impatient to wait at home. So, she heads to the bus stop and waits for her sister. After a while, Yeon-seo finally arrives, and gets angry to find Soo-jung there. She chastises her in sign language, explaining that bad people roam the city at night. This makes the little girls cry, prompting Yeon-seo to hug her tightly. Shortly after, as they walk away, Soo-chul watches them via the CCTV cameras he has installed everywhere. Several days pass by, and when the missing girl, Song-yi's whereabouts are still unknown, her father, Jong-ho, decides to take matters into his own hands. A taxi driver by profession, he wanders around the city and tries to distribute leaflets of his missing daughter. Most of the people simply ignore him, and the ones that take the leaflets either throw it away or wipe their noses with it. In the next scene, Yeon-seo is celebrating her birthday at home. Her sister has brought a lovely cake for her, and in return, she gives Soo-jung a packet of chocolates. In the basement, the kidnapper has also brought a cake. Turns out it is also the victim, Song-yi's birthday. After blowing out the candles, he tries to feed her some cake, but she refuses. She simply says, "My father will find you soon." Hearing the word father, Soo-chul becomes infuriated and he shouts at the girl to remain silent. Then, from a flashback, it is revealed that his parents didn't abandon him. His father was an alcoholic, who one day burned the whole house, killing everyone inside. Soo-chul somehow managed to get away, but the loss of his family spiraled him into depression. So, to cope up with the tragedy, he started killing people secretly. He then built a well-structured hideout inside the depths of the sewers, which acts as the perfect place to continue his crimes and hide from the outside world. Meanwhile, Jong-ho heads to the police station to ask about his daughter's investigation status. Of course, the cops ask him to stay patient, but Jong-ho knows that every passing day means that his chances of seeing his daughter are getting slimmer. So, he starts shouting at the cops and causes a scene. The commotion draws the attention of a senior cop, Kim, and as soon as he sees Jong-ho, he is taken aback. It turns out that the two have been friends since childhood. That night, they head to Jong-ho's place and discuss the matter over drinks. Kim has one too many, which causes him to fall asleep. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Jong-ho steals his flash drive, which has access to all the CCTV cameras in the area. He then inspects them carefully and finally gets some clues regarding his daughter's whereabouts. After a while, when Kim finally wakes up, he is angry to learn that his USB drive and gun have been stolen. He searches for his friend throughout the house, but to no avail. Instead, he finds information regarding Song-yi's disappearance pasted all over the wall. This makes him realize that Jong-ho has been planning to find the kidnapper by himself. Meanwhile, on the same wretched street, a cop arrives to repair a utility pole that has been broken. When he goes through the camera box, he is surprised to see a foreign wire coming out of it. The cop curiously follows it and arrives at the manhole, where he also finds a lump of human hair. Suspicious that there is something inside, he opens the manhole cover, grabs a torch, and jumps in. Unfortunately for him, Soo-chul is watching him through his cameras. He is well prepared and has set an elaborate set of traps in the dark tunnels. Soon, the cop falls right into his trap and gets entangled in some wires, like a bug in a cobweb. Soo-chul then slowly approaches him from the shadows and finishes him off with his most lethal weapon, a plastic bag. That night, Soo-jung again heads outside to wait for her sister, despite being warned against it several times. She stands near the manhole and waits innocently. Unbeknownst to her, Jong-ho can be seen keeping an eye on her. He arrived in this location as it was the last place Song-yi was seen. As it is very dark, Jong-ho believes that he has finally found his daughter. So, he steps foot on the gas and advances towards the girl, hoping that she will leave the way for him. But since Soo-jung is deaf, she doesn't hear anything and keeps on standing. Jong-ho almost hits her, but at the last moment, he swerves his car and crashes into a pile of garbage. The little girl finally gets to know that someone is after her, so she starts running into the dark alleys. Unfortunately, she comes across the real kidnapper, Soo-chul, who is dragging a woman's body into the manhole. At the same time, her phone also rings, blowing her cover wide open. Terrified, Soo-jung flees the scene, and while running, she inadvertently answers the video call from her sister. The latter can only hear the panting noises, but it is enough to make her realize that little Soo-jung is in danger. Yeon-seo quickly calls the police, but they again ask her to be patient. It appears as if none of the cops in the city are helpful. At the dark alley, the chase continues. As Soo-jung runs for her life, Jong-ho realizes that someone else is after the little girl too. He then deduces that it is the same person who kidnapped his daughter. So, he decides to save the girl, but unfortunately, Soo-chul gets to her first. He then knocks her out and drags her inside the manhole. Elsewhere, a worried Yeon-seo uses a GPS app and tracks her sister's phone to an abandoned house. She goes inside and finds several weird objects, like missing posters of people and some construction tools. Disregarding this, Yeon-seo tries calling her sister's phone, but to her surprise, the ringtone is heard from inside a manhole. This is when it finally dawns on Yeon-seo that her sister has been kidnapped. Since the incompetent cops will take too long to arrive, she decides to head inside and rescue Soo-jung herself. On the other hand, Jong-ho also stumbles upon one of the manholes in the area and enters it. There, he is taken aback to find several dead bodies and mutilated parts. He immediately calls his cop friend, Kim, and asks him to arrive as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the kidnapper is busy eliminating one of his victims. Once he is done, he starts cleaning up, but right then, he hears footsteps of someone approaching. Realizing that his place has been infiltrated, he leaves the corpse and heads out to take care of the problem. In another room, the little girl, Soo-jung, wakes up and tries running away, but as usual, the feral boy grabs her legs. It turns out the kidnapper has ordered him to look after the other victims. When he starts getting a bit physical, Soo-jung gives him a chocolate, which she had been carrying all along. This calms the boy down, and he finally lets her go. Upstairs, the cops arrive and start investigating the area. Suddenly, they hear screams coming from inside the manhole, and when they open it, a bruised and battered woman comes out. The two quickly escort her into their car but decide to investigate more. Kim goes inside the manhole alone while the other cop waits outside. Unfortunately, the decision turns out to be fatal as Soo-chul soon emerges from another manhole and kills the cop. He then slowly approaches the car and eliminates the woman that had escaped earlier. In the next scene, the two sisters finally reunite in the depths of the sewers. They share an emotional hug, but Yeon-seo urges Soo-jung to keep walking, saying that the bad guy is coming after them. After a while, they find a way out, and Yeon-seo goes first. But when it's the little girl's turn, Soo-chul arrives from behind and takes her away. This devastates the elder sister, and she wanders around every house in the neighborhood, calling for help. When no one replies, Yeon-seo takes the tough decision and goes back inside the sewers once again. Unfortunately, the kidnapper is waiting for her. He grabs her from behind and takes her away. Following this, he leaves the two sisters in a room and goes to his lab to prepare some chemicals. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the girls break free from their shackles and attempt to make a run for it. Soo-jung manages to get away, but when it's Yeon-seo's turn, the kidnapper arrives and stops her. He throws her around like a rag doll and prepares to strike her with a rod, but fortunately, Yeon-seo finds a taser gun on the floor, which she uses to momentarily subdue him. She then gets up and runs away to find her sister. In another room, the feral boy catches up to Soo-jung, but instead of catching her, he begins assisting her in getting away. It turns out he liked the chocolate so much that he is willing to die to have another one. Meanwhile, Jong-ho, who is also in the sewers, stumbles into a room, where he finds a plastic-covered corpse hanging from the ceiling. Jong-ho slowly uncovers it, and when he sees the face, he breaks down into tears. Unfortunately, it turns out to be his daughter's body. After so much effort and investigation, he couldn't save her, and now, he only wants one thing: revenge. Luckily for him, he is in the control room, from where Soo-chul tracks the entire area. Jong-ho checks the computers, and after he finds the kidnapper's location, he rushes towards him to finish him off. Soon, the two come face to face and engage in a brutal fight. Both of them match each other stride for stride, but Jong-ho eventually gains the upper hand when he shoots the kidnapper in the leg. But unfortunately, before he can finish him off, a huge explosion takes place after one of the gas pipes breaks during the fight. This opens the manhole cover, through which Kim gets out, without even helping his friend. On the other hand, the sisters once again reunite, and along with the feral boy, they try to make their way out of this sewer. They eventually find a route, but before they can climb up, the resilient kidnapper once again arrives and takes them away. This time, he plans to finish them off once and for all. At first, he locks the younger sister and the feral boy in a room. Then, he drags Yeon-seo outside and beats her to a pulp. As the kids watch in horror, Soo-chul picks up a rod and is about to strike her, but just then, Yeon-seo brings out a lighter and ignites a fire. As the room is already doused in chemicals, the fire quickly spreads, burning both of them in an instant. Poor Soo-jung tries her best to open the door and save her sister, but she is stopped by Jong-ho, who arrives in the nick of time. The next morning, the cops finally arrive and evacuate the entire area near the tunnel system. There, they discover hundreds of bodies. Some of them are sitting in the dining hall, indicating that the kidnapper also dreamt of having a family. Unfortunately, Yeon-seo's body is never recovered. She has been burned beyond recognition. In the final scene, as Soo-jung is being stretchered into an ambulance, she suddenly spots her sister's ring lying on the road. This makes her emotional, so she quickly gets up from the stretcher and rushes to retrieve it. At the same time, Jong-ho also arrives and hugs her tightly. The movie ends as we get to know that the two have started living together as father and daughter.